Flint Township Police, anybody in here? Oh, Jesus. There's a little kid.
There's a street in Flint Township, Michigan, that looks like 1,000 other streets in 1,000 other American towns. The houses sit close together. The lawns are cut. The driveways hold the kind of cars that get people to work and back. If you drove down this street, you wouldn't slow down. You wouldn't look twice. Nothing about this block would ever make you think that behind one of these doors, 2 little boys were fighting to stay alive. One of them was 5 years old. The other was 4. Both had special needs. And by the time anyone came for them, one of them was trying to eat raw, spoiled meat. Not because he didn't know better, but because hunger doesn't wait. It doesn't care about neglect. It doesn't understand abandonment. It just demands.
Yep. Hey, buddy. Kids back here in the bathroom. Check that other room.
I got a kid down in here. I got a kid back here.
Are they okay?
No. Hey, buddy. Hey. Hi. Hey.
This is... Jeez, where you at? Where you at? We got 2 kids, one completely naked and the other one's covered in... Would you mind getting a couple safety blankets so we can get them wrapped up in the cars? Let's get one coming to check them out.
Hey, buddy. Come here.
Hey, buddy. Where's Mommy and Daddy at?
Come up there. There you go.
1707. Yeah, can you start this way?
Hey.
17, what is the number of occupants you found from pages?
We've got 2 small children inside, approximately
They're on
3 and 1.
probably 4.
3 or 4. Hey, buddy, what's happening?
I got Cheesa getting them some blankets.
Okay.
We're gonna pop them in the cars.
You want the front door?
Whatever's gonna be closest to the cars because they don't have any shoes or anything. Hey, buddy, can you follow my partner? Can you follow my partner out that way?
The other boy was found on the floor of a bedroom, curled into himself, trying to take up as little space as possible, as if being small enough might make the fear go away. Their mother had been gone for days. This is their story, and it starts with a phone call that almost didn't happen. Before we go inside that house, before we see what police saw, before we hear the body camera audio that will stay with you long after this video ends, I need you to understand something about how this story almost didn't become a story at all. Because for days, maybe longer, 2 children existed on the other side of a wall that nobody thought to look behind. They cried and nobody heard them. They were hungry and nobody fed them. They were alone and the world kept moving. Until one neighbor, one single person on that block, picked up a phone and dialed 911. Now listen to that dispatch call carefully. The ages are wrong. Dispatch says 2 3-year-olds. The boys were actually 4 and 5. The details were already getting muddled before officers even arrived. But the core information was right. There are children in that house, and something is very wrong. We don't know exactly what the neighbor saw. We don't know how long they'd been watching, wondering, debating with themselves about whether to make that call. But what we know is this. Making that call is the reason these two boys are alive today. And when officers arrived at that front door, they had no idea what they were about to walk into. Flint Township police officers entered the home, and the first thing that hit them was the smell. Body camera footage shows them moving through a space that barely resembles a home. Trash is piled in layers. Not the kind of mess that accumulates over a bad weekend, but the kind of debris that tells you something has been going wrong here for a very long time. In the kitchen, the cabinets and refrigerator are smeared with what appears to be a green substance, possibly paint, possibly something else entirely. Furniture is broken. The floor is barely visible beneath the refuse. But here's what makes this different from a hoarding situation. Different from a condemned property. Different from a code violation that gets a fine and a court date. Somewhere inside this chaos, there are children. And then the officers hear them. They screamed, "Oh, Jesus, there's a little kid." /yep, "Hey, buddy, kid's back here in the bathroom. Check that other room." "I got a kid down in here. I got a kid down in here." That line. Listen to the officer's voice when he says it. There's a shift. You can hear the exact moment this stops being a welfare check and becomes something else entirely. They found the first boy, but the condition he's in and what they're about to find in the next room is something these officers will carry with them for the rest of their careers. When officers made their way deeper into the house, they found both boys in separate areas. One child was completely naked. The other was covered in what officers described as an unidentifiable substance. Neither boy had shoes. Neither had access to clean water, despite the fact that a faucet in the bathroom had been left running, overflowing the sink, flooding the area around it, but providing nothing useful to two children who didn't have the ability to help themselves. Think about that for a second. Water running endlessly with no one to turn it off. A perfect metaphor for everything that was happening in this house. Systems running without anyone in control. Resources wasted while children went without the basics of survival. We got two kids. One's completely naked, and the other one's covered in... Would you mind getting a couple safety blankets so we can get them wrapped up in the cars? Now I need to share something with you that the Flint Township Police Department included in their official statement when they released this body camera footage. And I want you to hear their exact words because they said it better than I ever could. One child was found trying to eat raw spoiled meat, not out of defiance, but because hunger cannot wait, and it does not understand neglect. The other was curled up on the bedroom floor, trying to make themselves small in the absence of care, instead of tucked safely into the bed that had been left vacant. A silent image of vulnerability, fear, and the need for protection that was nowhere to be found. I've read thousands of police statements. I can count on one hand the number of times a department has written about a case with that kind of precision, that kind of pain. Whoever wrote those words understood that this wasn't just a crime report. It was an epitaph for a childhood that was being stolen in real time. The officers knew these boys needed to get out of this house immediately. But what they didn't yet know was how long these children had been alone. And the answer, when it came, would turn this from a neglect case into something far more serious. Police determined that these boys, 4 and 5 years old, both with special needs, had been left alone inside this house for days. Not hours. Days. Days without a parent. Days without food that was safe to eat. Days without clean clothes. Without baths. Without someone to tuck them in or tell them it was going to be okay. Days of crying into a house that didn't answer back. On the walls, at the height of a small child, officers documented feces. Not in a bathroom. On the walls. At the level where a 4-year-old's hands would reach. And here's the detail that tells you everything about the survival instinct of children. Even children this young. They didn't give up. They didn't stop trying. One boy found meat. Raw, spoiled, dangerous, and tried to eat it because the alternative was nothing. The other boy made himself as small as possible on a bedroom floor, using the only defense mechanism available to a child who has been abandoned: disappearance. Hey buddy, can you follow my partner? Can you follow my partner out that way? I want you to notice something about these officers. Listen to their voices. They've just walked through a house that would make most adults physically ill, and their immediate instinct isn't anger, isn't judgment, isn't even the investigative process. It's gentleness. Hey buddy, follow my partner. They became the first safe adults these children had encountered in days, maybe longer. And they did it without training, without a script. They did it because some things are more important than procedure. The boys were safe. But the question that would consume investigators and ultimately lead to a set of felony charges was deceptively simple. Where is their mother? If you search Facebook for Krystal Farmer, you'll find a profile under the name Krystal Rose. And the Krystal Rose on that page looks like a lot of mothers you might know. Photos with her children. Status updates that suggest a woman engaged in her kids' lives. The kind of digital footprint that tells the world, I'm doing this. I'm a mom. I'm here. Except she wasn't there, not when it mattered. Krystal Farmer is the mother of the 2 boys found inside that Flint Township home. And when police tracked her down after discovering her children alone in conditions they described as potentially fatal, she was not inside the house. She was not in the neighborhood. According to police, she had simply left. But Krystal Farmer didn't appear out of nowhere. There's a history here, one that the system had already seen pieces of, and understanding that history is the only way to understand how 2 boys ended up alone in the dark, eating raw meat to survive. Here's what we know about Krystal Farmer's record. In 2017, she was convicted in Genesee County. That's the county where Flint is located, on a charge of larceny of a building. She was sentenced to probation. In 2022, a custody case involving Farmer appeared in Genesee County court records. Now, the details of that custody case are not fully public, and I want to be careful here because family court records often involve sensitive information about minors. But the existence of that case tells us something important. As far back as 2022, the question of who should have custody of children connected to Krystal Farmer was already a matter before a judge. What happened in that case? Was the home evaluated? Were the children's needs assessed? Were there conditions placed on custody that were or were not being monitored? These are questions that, as of this recording, remain unanswered, and they matter. Because if a court had eyes on this family in 2022, and 2 years later, those boys are found alone in a condemned level home, eating spoiled meat, then this isn't just a story about one mother's failure, it's a story about institutional failure. The prosecutor on this case made a statement that added another layer of complexity, one that the legal system will have to reckon with before this ever goes to trial. The prosecuting attorney told MLive, which is the major news outlet covering Michigan, that Krystal Farmer may suffer from mental health issues, and that this is something the prosecution intends to examine. Now, I want to be very precise about something because this is a space where nuance matters and GGB doesn't deal in easy answers. Mental illness is real. It is devastating. It can dismantle a person's ability to function, to care for themselves, to care for others. And if Krystal Farmer was in the grip of a mental health crisis so severe that she was unable to recognize the danger she was placing her children in, that is a tragedy on top of a tragedy. But, and this is critical, a mental health crisis does not occur in a vacuum. There are warning signs. There are systems designed to intervene. There are people in a person's life who see the unraveling before the collapse. So the question isn't just, was Krystal Farmer mentally ill? The question is, who knew? And what did they do about it? The charges against Farmer are severe. But the charge list alone doesn't tell you where this case is headed, or why one particular charge suggests that Farmer may have tried to cover her tracks when police finally caught up to her. Krystal Farmer was arrested and charged with 2 counts of child abandonment, 2 counts of second-degree child abuse, 2 counts of second-degree child abuse in the presence of another child, and 1 count of lying to a peace officer during a violent crime investigation. Every single one of those is a felony. Now, that last charge, lying to a peace officer, is the one that should get your attention. Police have not publicly disclosed what Farmer told them that was allegedly false. We've requested the full body camera footage from her interaction with officers, as well as any interrogation video. But the existence of that charge tells us that when confronted with what was found in her home, Farmer's response was not honesty, it was self-preservation. She was held on a $64,000 cash bond. Her next court date is March 5th. And now I need to talk about the part of this story that almost nobody is covering, because it's the part that should make all of us uncomfortable. Not just Krystal Farmer. 2 boys with special needs don't become invisible by accident. It takes a series of failures, institutional, communal, systemic, for children this young to vanish from the world's radar entirely. And what happened in Flint Township is a case study in how that vanishing act works. Let's start with the most basic question. Were these boys enrolled in school? A 5-year-old in Michigan should be in kindergarten, or at minimum registered for enrollment. A 4-year-old with special needs may qualify for early intervention programs, Head Start, or a special education preschool under an individualized education program, an IEP. If these boys were enrolled, their absences would have triggered mandatory reporting protocols. Teachers are legally obligated reporters. If a child stops showing up, the school is required to investigate and, if necessary, report to Child Protective Services. If these boys were not enrolled, that itself is a red flag. Michigan law requires children to attend school starting at age 6, but 5-year-olds enrolled in kindergarten are subject to attendance requirements, and any child receiving special education services is tracked. So either these boys were enrolled and their absences were ignored, or they were never in the system. To begin with, both answers are damning. But school is just one node in a network that was supposed to protect these children. There are others, and each one either failed or never existed. Michigan's Child Protective Services, part of the Department of Health and Human Services, is mandated to investigate reports of abuse and neglect. Were there prior CPS reports on this family? Given the 2022 custody case, it is almost certain that CPS had at least peripheral involvement with the Farmer household at some point. What about the boys' medical care? Children with special needs typically have regular appointments like pediatricians, specialists, therapists. Were those appointments being kept? Did any medical professional notice signs of neglect? What about the boy's father? The script of every news report on this case mentions Krystal Farmer, but the father or fathers remain entirely absent from the narrative. Who is he? Was he involved? Did he have custody rights? Did he raise concerns? What about extended family, friends, church community, anyone? I'm not asking these questions to excuse Krystal Farmer. I'm asking them because if the answer to all of them is nobody was watching, then we don't just have a neglect case. We have a blueprint for how children disappear in plain sight in the richest country on earth. But in the middle of all these systems that failed, there is one person who didn't. One person who refused to look away. And that person's decision to pick up a phone is the reason these boys are alive. We don't know the neighbor's name. We probably never will. And maybe that's appropriate, because the act itself matters more than the identity behind it. But I want you to think about what that phone call actually required. Because we talk about see something, say something like it's simple, like it's easy, like there's no cost to it. Calling 911 on a neighbor means making an accusation. It means potentially being wrong. It means the awkwardness of living next door to someone you reported. It means the fear of retaliation. It means involving yourself in someone else's life in a way that most of us have been socialized to avoid. Every day in neighborhoods across this country, people hear things. They see things. They get that feeling, that instinct that says something isn't right. And most of the time they talk themselves out of it. It's not my business. I'm probably wrong. I don't want to cause trouble. This neighbor didn't talk themselves out of it, and because they didn't, two boys who were running out of time got a chance. Police have confirmed that if those children had been left in that house much longer, the outcome could have been fatal. Days was already pushing the limit. For two children this young, with special needs, without food, without supervision, the margin between rescue and tragedy was razor thin. As of this recording, Krystal Farmer sits in Genesee County Jail on a $64,000 cash bond. She's due in court on March 5th, facing 7 felony charges. If convicted on all counts, she faces years in prison. The boys have been removed from her custody. They are, according to available information, in the care of the child welfare system. The same system that, depending on the answers to the questions we've asked tonight, may have already had the chance to protect them and didn't. Their names have not been released. Their faces have not been shown. In every news report, in every body camera frame, they are just two boys, 4 and 5, special needs, alone, invisible. At Gravel Ghost Basement, we believe the story belongs to the people who can't tell it themselves. Tonight, that's two boys in Flint Township, Michigan, who survived something no child should ever have to endure. Not because a system saved them, not because an institution intervened, but because one person on one street decided that what they were seeing was worth a phone call. If you're watching this and you've ever had that feeling about a house on your block, a child in your neighborhood, a situation that didn't sit right, don't wait. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't assume someone else will call. Be the neighbor. If this story moved you, I need you to do one thing. Share it. Not for our channel, for the next child who's invisible behind a door that nobody's opened yet. Subscribe to True Crime Buff HQ so you never miss a story. Hit that bell and leave a comment telling me. Have you ever made a call like that? Or have you ever wished you had? The story belongs to the people who can't tell it themselves. We'll see you in the next one.